What is going on, everybody? I just wanted to come back with another round of some more in-depth team roles of like things you'll see on a Pokemon team. Now, not every team is going to have all of these roles, but like these are a little more in-depth. Last time I talked about like tanks and walls and wall breakers and setup mons and stuff, and this time I want to go a little bit more in-depth and see some more things that most, if not all teams, but I don't want to say all, most teams are probably going to have like some of these roles. So starting off, I just want to start with clerics. So this is a thing that's definitely optional, and it completely depends on your team. So not all teams are going to have this, but this is something that a lot of teams are going to want, and that is just some way to heal the rest of your team. The point of a cleric is to either pass some health or cure the status condition of the rest of the team. So here's some of the OU clerics. You have Clefable, who has Wish and Heal Bell. Wish gives you half your maximum HP, but on the next turn. So what you can do is you can wish this turn, and then you can switch to a different Pokemon and pass the wish off to them, so that they get healed up next turn. So that's a great thing to have on a team, because obviously you can heal up something. If you're on like a more hyper offensive team, and I'm going to talk about like team archetypes in a different video, so like if I start talking about hyper offense and stuff, just know that video will be up in like a couple of days probably, so I'll explain like what hyper offense and stuff is. Anyway, if you're mostly like an attacking team, you're not going to need something like a cleric, especially with Wish, because you're going to be kind of frail. It's going to be easy to take you out. This is more for like bulkier teams that like can sustain some hits. You might want to pass a wish off so that somebody can restore some health. And then Heal Bell can cure the status of your team. So if something gets toxic or thunder waved or something else like that. So Wish and Heal Bell can be really great for that. Other moves would be Aromatherapy, which does the same thing as Heal Bell. Chansey has the same thing, Wish, Heal Bell. Chansey also has another thing I just remembered, Healing Wish, which kills you, and then it does completely revamps their HP, completely restores their HP and cure status of whatever switches in. So that's another great move, and Mew also has Heal Bell. And there are some other clerics like Jirachi and whatever. You can kind of just like, if you ever want to know if like what Pokemon could possibly do something like this, you can just go ahead and search Heal Bell, and you can see all the mons that learn Heal Bell in here on the Showdown team builder. So it's really helpful. And if you're like, oh, I want a Heal Beller, but I want something that's in OU, so like here are all the things that can learn Heal Bell in OU. So once you get more comfortable, you can actually start making your own sets, and you're like, I want something on this team with Heal Bell. Let me just look it up, and I know Magearna doesn't usually have Heal Bell in OU, but I kind of want to try this set, and maybe you work out a really great set that's really great for your team, or maybe it's great for everybody and people just haven't tried it yet and it can stick. So those are the clerics. They have like Heal Bell, Healing Wish, Aromatherapy, that kind of thing. The next is the hazard setters. So I think every single team, like period, should have some sort of hazard setter. There's very, very, very few exceptions. Like it doesn't matter what kind of team you're on, you're almost always going to be better with a hazard setter. Both a hazard setter and the next thing, a hazard remover, you pretty much need one. It's not always going to be the same hazard, and it's not always going to be the same removal, but you definitely should have some sort of hazard setter and hazard remover on your team. So things like Stealth Rock and Spikes on Skarmory. Ferrothorn's another thing that can set up Spikes and Stealth Rock. Toxapex can set up Toxic Spikes. Araquanid can set up Sticky Web. So on pretty much every team you make, you're going to want Stealth Rock. So Stealth Rock, just like when something switches in, it does damage to them, and that's just so important. It doesn't matter if you're a stall team or a hyper offensive team or something else. Again, if that doesn't make sense, I'll explain it in another video coming up soon. But you're always going to want Stealth Rock on the opponent's side of the field because it just does damage to them when they switch in, based on how effective Rock is to them. How effective Rock is against the type that's switching in. So it's just extremely helpful. So something like Charizard or Volcarona coming in loses half of its health every time it switches in on Stealth Rock. And then Spikes is just another thing with residual damage if you're touching the ground when you switch in. So that's just like, Spikes you don't necessarily need on every team. It can sometimes be used in place of Stealth Rock if you really don't want a Stealth Rocker, but like you really should use Stealth Rock on every single team. Spikes are a thing that like you would want on every team, but they're not like super necessary. Toxic Spikes. Toxic Spikes is very team dependent. It can poison something on switch in, but only if it's not steel, not poison, and it is touching the ground. Poison types will absorb Toxic Spikes. I'm going to talk about hazards in another video too, more in depth, but just know Toxic Spikes are a thing, and that might be a thing that you want to consider when building a team. And the last thing is Sticky Web, and Sticky Web is very team dependent. If you're making a team with Sticky Web, you're making a Sticky Web team. So that's like a team archetype. So only know if you want to build a Sticky Web team. That's another thing I'm going to be talking about in the team archetype videos. So if you want to build a Sticky Web team, you're going to need a Sticky Webber. But if you're not building a Sticky Web team, you don't need a Sticky Webber. It's literally that simple. Another thing you need on almost every team, this one I guess there are very, very few exceptions, but I would say you pretty much still always want some sort of hazard removal. And there are 2 ways to do that. Well, I guess 3-ish, like 2.5. So first would be Defog. A lot of flying types and stuff get that. Second would be Rapid Spin. In OU, it's pretty much only Excadrill. And the third would be Magic Bounce. And Magic Bounce, there are a couple of Magic Bounce users, like pretty much one that you're going to find in OU would be Mega Deontay, and that just makes it so that if somebody tries to set up hazards on you, they just bounce back onto their own side of the field. The other one you would see in OU is actually Mega Sableye. So yeah, there are 2 that you'll see in OU. So they just prevent it from getting up in the first place. Defog, know that clears both sides of the field, and then Rapid Spin just clears your side of the field. But people are always going to be trying to set up hazards against you. No matter what team you're playing, they're going to be trying to set up their Stealth Rock because I told you every team's going to have it. And then you want a way to get rid of it. So, because you don't want them on your side of the field. It's a pretty big part of the game. So, since some people like it, some people don't. But like since it's in there, like you have to be conscious about it, and you have to absolutely take it into account when you're team building, because entry hazards are a big part of the high level metagame. So always have hazard removal and hazard setting on your team, mostly Stealth Rock, and then usually going to be Defog, sometimes Rapid Spin. Usually not Magic Bounce. Magic Bounce is more team dependent. So those are those 3. The next would be Stall Breakers. So Stall is an extremely annoying type of team to play against that I'm going to talk about in my team archetype video. But basically the point is exactly what it sounds like. Just outlive your opponent, and eventually your opponent's going to, if they can't break through your Stall team, then you essentially just win because there's nothing they can do, and eventually they'll slowly get chipped away with hazards and die. So basically you want some way to take down Stall. So Stall is just like, if you remember last video, walls. Stall is basically a team of 6 walls. So anything they can do to just not die and keep everything alive. So basically with the Stall team, the best way to do it is just like break down piece by piece. If you can take out one of the important members, then the other Pokemon on your team will be able to punch holes through other parts of the Stall team. So good ways to stop Stall teams. First of all, they don't have a lot of like attacking moves. Like they really don't attack much at all. So Taunt is really good against a lot of Stall teams, something like a Chansey will be just stuck using Seismic Toss. Skarmory can pretty much only use Counter. These are just basic Pokemon you'll find on a stall team. Taunt is just really great because they don't really have attacking moves, and even if they do, they don't have a lot of attacking power. So Taunt really stops stall teams from doing what they want to do usually. Magma Storm is great on something like Heatran because it does a lot of damage, but it also traps. And a big part of stall teams is being able to switch around and keep your Pokemon healthy. So trapping something and like forcing it to stay in where you can kill it is really, really great because it can break down one piece of the puzzle. And if you break down one piece of the puzzle, you can kind of just take down the whole thing kind of just dismantles. So Heatran's a great stall breaker. Kartana's great for a different reason. He has like Swords Dance and stupid high attack. And if you give him something like Fightinium Z and Sacred Sword and like Leaf Blade and Swords Dance, then you get one Swords Dance up and you can kind of just punch holes through the stall team. And if you can overpower something, it's essentially just a super, super strong wall breaker. If you can break down one piece of their puzzle, the team will start to crumble. Third one is Gliscor. There are a bunch more, but these are just examples again. Again, Gliscor has Taunt. The other thing Gliscor has is Toxic Orb and Poison Heal. This means, one, if he's poisoned, he restores health. So you're restoring a lot of health every turn. And then two, you can't be statused. So a big way stall teams try to do damage would be like with Toxic or with Will-O-Wisp to burn you. And if you have Toxic on, you can't get status, which means you're constantly recovering HP. And if you taunt them, there's like not much they can do to hurt you. So basically Gliscor just like outstalls the stall team. So he's really good at breaking down stall teams, especially if you can get past like Mega Sableye, because Mega Sableye can cause Gliscor a little bit of trouble. He can knock off your Toxic Orb. If you're not poisoned yet, he can burn you or something. But like the rest of the teams, like Gliscor is usually very, very good at taking down. So I would say a lot of teams, I would say every team actually. Every team should have some way of dismantling stall, or else you're just gonna auto lose to the stall matchup. And this last one is sort of, I like to call them red alert mons. If something's going wrong, you want to have some way of just recovering that ground, you know. If somebody sets up with a setup sweeper on your opponent's team, or they get Ash Greninja in and he's got his choice specs and he's just going to be wailing away on your team, and like you essentially, like a lot of teams wouldn't have any hope left. You have your red alert mons that can kind of come to save the day when poop really hits the fan, let's just say that. So something like Mimikyu does this with Disguise. He can take one hit always, unless you're fighting like a Mold Breaker Pokemon, which will break through your Disguise and kill you. But Disguise is really great for if somebody sets up with a Pokemon and they try to kill you, you always have that one turn where you'll live and you can try to kill them back. So he's a really great Pokemon. You can also throw a red card on him so that they'll get switched out after they set up and they'll be back at neutral stats. So that's an option. Or you can just try to kill him with Mimikyu. Toxapex is cool because he has Haze, and Haze, like Toxapex 1, like even after something sets up, sometimes Toxapex can just live it. And the other thing Haze does is just takes away stat changes. So you can set their stats back to neutral, and even if you lose your Toxapex, like at least you can reset their stats so that they're not going to sweep through the rest of your team. And sometimes after you haze, you'll be able to live and switch out with Regenerator and recover your health and stuff. So haze mons are another great way. There are other things with haze that you can use, but Toxapex is one of the best. Ditto is really interesting because you put a choice scarf on it, and if you come in and you have Imposter, which automatically transforms into the opponent, You copy all of their stat changes, and then if you have a choice scarf, you're pretty much always faster. So you can come in, take their boosts, and use it against them. So Ditto's a really fun, although he's like in a super low tier, you can use him in any tier. Like you can use him with the legendaries, and Ditto's still gonna do the same thing. He's one set, but it's a really good set. And the last one for like red alert mons would be unaware mons. So the ability unaware just ignores stat changes. So it's like, I don't care if you have +6 attack. I don't care if you use sword stance 3 times. I'm taking no damage. Yeah, well, not no damage, but like as if you were in neutral. So unaware is just another great thing. And like I'd say a lot of teams want like at least one red alert mon, like for when crap hits the fan, have some way of dealing with that. Some will have more, some will have less, but pretty much everything, I would say most teams would want something to protect them. Even like hyper offense will usually have a Mimikyu, and then like stall teams will usually have unaware Pokemon and haze. So depending on the team, but you pretty much always want some form of insurance for if stuff goes wrong. But basically that's going to be it for today's more in-depth things. I might talk about some more niche Pokemon in the future with like, again, like sticky web setting and like screen setting for certain types of offense. But I also want to do the team archetype video. So there's just a lot more that I want to talk about, getting people into competitive mons and getting them up to speed. So if you like the video, leave it a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment if you have a question. I'll be active in the comments to make sure any questions get answered. But I hope you have a great day. Peace.